Let's start. All right, I'm excited. Thank you everyone for joining us tonight. It's a pretty exciting webinar, I must say. I'm probably the most excited about this one. We've had registrations from not just every state and territory across Australia, but we've also gone international. So we have people joining us from the Philippines, from Indonesia, from Egypt, from the UK, from the USA as well. So this is very exciting for us at Evidence for Learning, and particularly exciting because we have such a wonderful panel with us here tonight, who I will introduce in just 1 second. So what I would love you all to do, and you are, thank you. Fantastic. You're joining us. Spain. That's the best. Sorry, I will do that from time to time. I will be distracted by the chat box. I was kind of a good teacher, but sometimes distracted. All right, so let's jump into quick introductions to who is on our wonderful panel tonight. I'm being distracted by the chat box. I'll stop. Okay. First of all, I would like to very warmly introduce Dr. Catherine Dix. Dr. Catherine Dix has extensive experience in the area of cell. I'll read her bio. So she's a senior research fellow in the Educational Monitoring and Research at the Australian Council for Educational Research, and she's worked there since 2015. So she brings a diverse experience in project managing and evaluation in national-based initiatives and teacher development programs. This is the part that I love the most about Dr. Dix, but I'm a bit biased towards this, but she's got extensive experience in questionnaire design, large-scale survey design, implementation and real-time reporting, along with expertise in many online platforms. She's designed numerous questionnaires across early childhood and a higher education context. Now, no, this is the best bit. Dr. Dix has expertise in the use of statistical and multi-level modelling programs, I think, which include everything, really.
Yep.
Everything. All the beautiful programs that you can use. And this allows her to pursue her strong interest in research and the factors that maximise student outcomes. So we're very pleased to have Dr. Dix with us tonight. Next up, pleasure. Next up, we have Michael Rosenbrock, who is the Assistant Principal at Wodonga State Secondary College. We're so pleased to have you here with us, bringing your practical expertise to us, plus, most importantly, my favourite degree ever, the degree in aerospace engineering. How good is that? But I'll read it all. Passionate educator, teacher of physics, multimedia and mathematics with over 10 years working in schools. So Michael's also been seconded and worked with the Victorian Curriculum Authority, which is a great honour, and has also contributed to multiple textbooks in physics. Wow. He's also sat on the Science Teachers of Australian Council for 7 years, and he regularly presents at educational conferences and has also just completed today, are we allowed to say this? An article for ACR Teacher Magazine, which will be published.
Definitely.
Which will be published soon.
Soon, very soon.
Soon. Very soon. Yep. So that's very exciting too. So he's a very passionate advocate for what we're very passionate at E4L about, which is supporting students from backgrounds that are disadvantaged. And he really works with that passion in the school that he's currently at. So prior to working in schools, he worked in the aerospace, automotive and software industries in Germany, USA and Australia. So impressive. Bachelor of Aerospace Engineering, my number one favourite, Bachelor of Business from RMIT, and a Graduate Diploma of Education from Monash University. Thank you for being in the room tonight, Michael.
Thanks very much for the warm welcome, Tanya.
Absolute pleasure to have you here. And then we've got Dr. Pauline Ho, who is an Associate Director at Evidence for Learning. That's where I work as well. But not only does she work there, prior to that, she was a teacher practitioner. So Pauline was a master teacher in Singapore, and she has a Bachelor of Arts in Music and English, a Master's in Education from the National Institute of Education in Singapore, and she has a PhD as well. And that was investigating the impact of policy and curriculum on the academic and social outcomes of disadvantaged students. And she's been recognised for several different fellowship awards. And I know, and she hasn't added this as well, but she's also worked at policy at a national level in AITSL as well. I'll just add that as well.
Tanya.
So warm welcome to all our amazing panelists tonight. I feel very privileged to be facilitating this conversation. So let's get started. So I am meeting, and we are meeting all over the world tonight. So thank you for joining us. I'm meeting on the traditional lands, meeting on the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and I pay my respects to elders past, present, and most importantly, those emerging. And I think that is especially relevant at this particular point in time in history. Now, I'll just hand over to Pauline to talk to this for a second.
Yes, I just want to give a bit of context. So we are experiencing a very difficult time, obviously. So I just want to start by thanking all the teachers and educators out there who are grappling with the impact of this whole thing called COVID-19. And both on a personal level as well as educators, as we think about what this really means for our dear students, their learning, their well-being, which will likely have an impact on their future. So just thank you for getting through these very difficult times. But really delighted to have so many of you from different parts of the world join us, and this just goes to show how we are really in this together. So this wonderful interactive, it's meant to be interactive, but we can't obviously show the interaction, but UNESCO has reported there's an estimated of 60% of students across 123 countries who are currently experiencing school closures, and 1.1 billion affected children due to COVID-19 being affected across the world. This thankfully has decreased, and obviously now our attention has turned to the possible effects of that school closures and trauma that can have on our schools and communities. So students are not only impacted by not being in schools, but not having the support of their teachers and peers. And in addition to family stress, parents facing sudden employment, the anxiety that they must be feeling. So today we really want to bring forth the best evidence and hopefully have a conversation with everyone on what we can do to best help them when they return back to schools. And schools really provide that hope and regeneration, I think. So Tanya, over to you.
Thank you, Pauline. These are incredibly challenging and difficult times, and I know to varying extents across the world and even in different states and territory across Australia. And I re-echo Pauline's comments of how amazed we are at educators, including yourself, Michael, in your response to this at your school. And I know for myself personally, the teachers at my son's school as well. So what are we going to cover tonight? We've really structured all of this around answering your questions. There are a few areas too that we're going to cover off on that. We'll explore some of the basic principles around SEL. So, as always, it will all be evidence informed. We'll be specifically looking at how you can implement this in your school setting, and an overview of the three general categories involved in understanding social-emotional learning interventions. So we've received 31 questions tonight, which is quite unbelievable, and over 250 people have registered for this webinar. So we've organised your questions into themes, and we're going to be answering those first of all with a bit of a presentation from myself and Pauline, and then we'll move to the panel to answer as well. While we're presenting though, we ask the other panellists to feel free to interject at any time. All right, fantastic everyone. So I'll hand over to Pauline for this.
Thanks, Tanya. So at E4L, for those who know, that we really start and end with evidence, everything that evidence tells us from practice of how things work. And one of the things that we have done is besides the toolkit, which tells us the effect sizes of what works, is also to really dive into the best evidence that can tell us across different interventions and approaches out there. And one of the things that we have done is a systematic review on well-being. This is something that Catherine is leading. That's why she's on this webinar today, to share some of the initial findings. And we are currently still underway with this project, but we just want to give you a kind of a little bit of flavor of what this systematic review is all about. Someone can't hear anything, but I hope the rest of you can. We have gone through 5,000 over articles, and we are going to share some of the initial findings with you today. And this is really in support. We have support from Big Health, which has kindly given us the support and commissioning of this project.
Thank you, Pauline, and thank you, Dr. Catherine Dix, who's undertaking this incredibly rigorous study currently, and we look forward to seeing all those results in the near future. So these are the questions that were submitted around general questions around social emotional well-being. I won't read them out. You can see them there for you. I guess they're all quite general, apart from the one around being a casual relief teacher, which we really do appreciate because we value you as well as an important part of that teaching workforce. The other questions that we received that we're bundling all together and we'll respond to in a big block are around implementation and also talking about the SAFE framework for SEL. Around implementation, we won't go into a lot of detail just because of time now. But I've linked out to our guidance report there, which covers implementation extensively. And I'm sure that all of you are working with some type of cycle within your school. That's our cycle at Evidence for Learning, which is explore, prepare, deliver, and sustain, which provides a structure to the way that you proceed in your school with implementation of plans. Great. I'll hand back to you, Pauline.
Thanks, Tanya. Social emotional learning is all about the process in which children learn and understand their emotions, and then really having the skills to succeed in life. So in schools, this is their safe haven. This is their place where they learn and interact with their peers and with their teachers together to exhibit and to really apply those skills such as resiliency, self-regulation to learn, and most importantly, empathy for others. So social emotional learning is one of our approaches in our teaching and learning toolkit. And I'm very happy to see that there's extensive evidence that has been found on this topic, plus 4 months of impact and really high evidence security of 4 padlocks. So what you see there are 4 padlocks, meaning to say, they're not handbags. I know Tanya, you're laughing because we have the same running joke that they look like handbags, but they're not. They are padlocks, meaning to say, backing all this evidence is really confidence around what everyone the EF in the UK has found behind this all the extensive evidence that is really, really conclusively rigorous. And the cost of running them is mainly around professional learning and development, but we can tell you through the evidence that we are going to speak to later that teachers can really implement it in their school settings effectively.
Thank you, Pauline. So we would like to hear from you how you define social emotional learning. So if you pop that into the chat box at the moment, and we'll have that running in the background while we go on and keep discussing. I think Pauline gave us a really lovely introduction to some of the most important concepts in social emotional learning. Any response is a good response, people. Don't feel shy. All right, we'll continue on, but I'll be looking at that chat box, okay? So you got to fill it up, or else my eyes will get sore for no reason. All right, now handing back to Pauline again.
I think we've gone through a bit of this, and thanks for all the interesting sharings that you have. Yes, I think social emotional learning is all about having positive, behaviors and positive sharing and emotions between peers and teachers in schools, as opposed to focusing directly on academic or cognitive elements of learning. SEL approaches might focus on the ways that students work in collaboration with their peers, teachers, family, or community. The three broad categories of SEL interventions: universal programs, which generally take place in the classroom; more specialized programs that are targeted at students with particular social and emotional problems; and at the school level, whole school approaches that also aim to have greater connection and engagement with their community, like parents and carers, as well as community leaders. We will also share a bit later that although there are three types of programs at different levels, what we found is that it's not just one program that works, but in totality, how things work together in a school that makes it well embedded into the classroom. That really matters.
Excellent. And I just read on the chat, and I just have to read this out because this particularly resonated with me. There's so many good ones, but I'm just going to read this one out. That's a person's understanding of how their actions and feelings impact within a social setting. I thought, that's lovely. I can see Dr. Catherine Dix nodding as well. Yep. Yep, absolutely. Isn't it beautiful? There's a lot of beautiful descriptions. Keep them coming. Thank you very much. So, yeah, meta-analysis, love them. Love, love, love. All right, got distracted by the pure excitement. On the x-axis there, we have our effect sizes. On the y-axis, that's just in alphabetical order of the different studies. So these are the studies that go into the background of the teaching and learning toolkit. If we have a look, what's our mean weighted effect size? That's 0.28, and then we've translated that into additional 4 months of learning for every 12 months in the school. So that's just giving you an idea of the range of different effect size. I'm not going to talk to the individual studies. Pauline will touch on some of those very, very soon. All right. Now, I'm just starting off with some general principles around the social emotional learning. This was taken from the Inclusion Ed site that was just released a couple of months ago, and we made a tailored toolkit for that you can see in your top right. And I just like these general principles as an umbrella overview of what we really want to see from our teachers, which is supportive and caring. They promote mutual respect. And we see this in the best classrooms. And we all expect our students to do the best and have that high expectation of them. And this goes into a bit more around supporting students with special needs, but it's always important for all students, which is really scaffolding the learning with proactive classroom management, also having an interactive teaching and cooperative learning embedded into the classroom. I'll hand back to Pauline at this point.
So I think in this context that we're in, we really need to think about resilience and how we actually could build resilience through effective SEL. Well, SEL is not just one aspect. It is built out of many aspects like well-being, social emotional learning, coping skills, and so on and so forth. Motivation is part of it as well, but resilience is really, I think, important into this context. So DULAC has really shown that through a systematic review of over 213 programs that has been done involving 270,000 students, that it really has an impact of 3 months for learning. So what the collective evidence is telling us is that it's not just one thing that matters, but the positive and caring practices that are embedded in every aspect of schools throughout the day that is important. And it has to be thoughtfully well designed as part of the curriculum. Another thing that came out, which is important, is also the fact that they are usually not done in isolation of just one classroom intervention, but also in complementing with maybe, you know, a whole school-wide initiative that might involve parents in having, you know, parents involved in discussions, daily interactions with their with their children, to do their homework, to collaborate with their teachers, to be part of the whole learning process. So these are some examples. MindUp is one of them, which we will send through the slides, and you can have a better read of some of these interventions that might work.
Thank you, Pauline. So why is it, and we were really at Evidence for Learning, are really focused in on programs that improve students' learning outcomes, as is Dr. Catherine Dix, and I'm sure as is Michael as well. That's what we're in the game for, is how can we improve students' learning. So this is some theories around how CEL actually works within a student to influence their abilities in academics. So they're more self-aware, they're more confident about their learning. They also set higher academic goals, have better self-discipline, they motivate themselves, they manage their stress better, and they organise their approach to learning, and they get better grades. So they think it has an impact, and this is from the meta-analysis from Durlach, looking at the executive cognitive functions, such as inhibitory control, which we all know is important in all of our lives and very important in the lives of students. And so it's that greater effect of regulation and controlling that most important prefrontal cortex, which we know can be a real challenge, as spoken from the words of a mum and a teacher. Here are the safe principles that Durlach identified, and I'll throw to Pauline for this.
I think we just know that there's certain things that would really make it more, like we can have all the positive and caring environment, but really the explicit connectedness to school and learning is very, very important. So these are some of the principles that are actually found by Durlach, which is sequence, active, focus, and explicit. So having step-by-step training, and not just for the students, having a curriculum learning session within their part of their curriculum. So if they can have a weekly lesson as part of the curriculum that is really gone through a step-by-step training on what some of the skills are, but also for the teachers as well, who must be professionally trained and prepared to deliver a good CEL program. Active forms of learning just meaning to say you can have all the skills, but if you do not have a situation, or you're not encouraged to use them, apply them in learning, that is actually not helpful. So if teachers can embed opportunities for students to actually to really apply and really show acts of kindness and empathy to their friends and peers, that would be very important as well.
Right. Sorry, thank you.
No, all good.
Okay, now answering your questions from the panel, and we've just had a question in the box as well. Yes, write to us to get your certificate for participation in this webinar, and I'll provide the details at the end. So hours allocated to social-emotional learning. With this, I'm going to start off by throwing to Dr. Catherine Dix on this, and then to Michael, and then to Pauline. So Dr. Catherine Dix, what can you tell us about how much time, or how should we approach CEL in a school?
Yeah, certainly. Thank you very much. Ultimately, it does mostly happen in the classroom, absolutely, but really well implemented CEL happens across the school. So it's not per se a select amount of time in a classroom lesson that should be allocating it. It actually should be pervading all of your teaching practice, all of your learning opportunities, to help those students to develop a positive mindset, to work collaboratively together, you know, to really be mindful about how they're regulating, you know, the challenges that they face when they get a bad test score, or, you know, how they bounce back from that. So, you know, it's looking for those opportunities as a teacher to really jump in and see where you can absolutely value add to the way you're teaching. It's pedagogical. So, you know, is there opportunities to better notice that one of your students might be particularly struggling on a day, and that something negative might have happened at home or something, and they're bringing that in. So what strategies do you have in place to recognise those sorts of challenges, and then work out what the best approach forward for that child is to help them overcome that challenge, so that they're present in the classroom, and really geared for learning at the academic level, because they've got all of those other parts in place around their well-being.
Fantastic, thank you. And I love the depth of expertise that you brought to that, really bringing in not just that it's an isolated incident, the pedagogy, the relationship with the teacher, and that really practical element of whole school implementation. Michael, I'll throw to you. What's your perception of this?
Thanks, Tanya. Look, I'd very strongly agree with what Catherine said there, in that an approach to social and emotional learning needs to be integrated across everything you do in the school. It really essentially needs to be part of the school culture, part of the teacher's culture, and something that students can understand is part of the ethos or the way that you operate in the school. In our context, which is senior secondary education, so students in their last couple of years of schooling, we have up to 75 minutes a week where we run programs that would address something specifically, and those programs do fulfil a need, the specific programs, in terms of building a culture and building understanding and building a common language, so that students and teachers have a shared understanding of what we're talking about, and that they can then work with that understanding when something comes up in a class. But yeah, at the end of the day, that has to translate into the culture and the practice. And I would add that we as teachers need to model it. We need to model it and model it and model it, particularly at senior secondary, where we're dealing with young adults, taller than me, broader than me, and it's about helping them to transition into the bigger world. And I would argue that part of it too is about your philosophy around SEL. So in terms of it really is central to student achievement, particularly in the later years of schooling. If students are not able to take ownership, responsibility and manage themselves, they are not going to succeed in school and in life. So it is central, and it's a matter of seeing it that way as well.
Thank you, Michael. That was beautiful. I'm a little overwhelmed. It was just, I love the shared language. I love the cultural, and particularly I'm a secondary teacher as well. So that modelling, I think what you said, it's practicing what you preach. And so for that being really clear and really present. Pauline, I was going to throw to you in regards to the Australian curriculum now, and how that links in. But I know that we've got curriculums from across the world, but we'll just deal with Australia tonight.
I think in terms of everything that has been said by Michael and Catherine, I strongly think that there's no fixed time to that. There might be a recommended kind of time frame based on all the interventions that have been studied, but we do just need to ensure that they're embedded throughout the whole school learning process, and to think of it in different activities. So it not just we can have opportunities to apply, but also having the opportunity for students to learn from what good practices are, how they could actually, and also opportunities to show that as well, and also not to forget engagement with parents. So I think that's really critical.
That's a really excellent point. And in looking at the curriculum for Australia, it falls under the general capabilities curriculum. So, and you can see it there, and we've got a link out to it. Thank you, Pauline. I think that's really important, is the really making it practical. Then what we have was, we've had a lot of questions about students with additional needs and how to deal with them in growing their specific social-emotional well-being. So I'm going to hand off first of all to Dr. Dix again, who's going to talk to this, and then to Michael.
Lovely, thank you. Look, a whole school approach by its nature includes everyone in that community. So the beautiful, beauty of heading down that pathway is that you're not stigmatising particular children, because they've got developmental difficulties. So if you're applying approaches that support everyone, they're also supporting those students as well. And you're actually gearing up that common language, that common deep understanding around the challenges and the issues that are also going to benefit the peers of those children. So if everyone's learning and understanding, everyone's more empathetic, more compassionate, more understanding and more supportive. So just to sort of put that there, but within that, there's always other programs and initiatives that also help support targeted intervention. So students with autism, for example, often need specific programs to help them better connect and engage on a social capacity that will help benefit their learning capacity. And those other sorts of programs that were listed there. So yeah, there are programs out there. We have a thing called a programs guide in Australia, which you just type in disability and it'll pop up any number of programs that can help support parents working with teachers to support their child with additional needs, support siblings of children with additional needs. You know, so it goes so much broader than just the child itself. And often, you know, it's that analogy of, you know, it takes a village to raise a child. I think that's, you know, never truer than for a child that has those additional needs. They really do need everyone working together to give them the best outcomes, which they absolutely deserve.
So school as a village, I like that.
Yep.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Especially that empathetic understanding, and I like what you talked to as well, is that generalised programs beneficial for all students, but then thinking about, that's really where this slide comes in, is maybe some students will require a targeted or specialist intervention, and to really be thinking in that way. Michael, I would love you to talk about this.
Yeah, certainly. Look, I again strongly agree. I'm in furious agreement with what Catherine's added there, and there's obviously a place for targeted programs, whether that's aides or teaching assistants. Obviously, that's been an area of work for evidence for learning as well, and its effectiveness. But also, you know, upskilling teachers has to be part of it as well. And if we do have that whole school approach, and we do have everyone involved, then teachers are better able to notice something, or to make an adjustment, or to make a modification, or to just realise exactly what's going on for a particular student. Certainly having supports in place can really help that. The other thing I'd say, I think there was a question there about adjustments as well, and I think that's also around having some clear processes and expectations and ways that teachers can make appropriate adjustments, whether that's content or process or product, but just so that those things can be done to help to make the environment suitable. And, you know, there's many things that can be put in place. Obviously, in the senior years of schooling, you encounter some high stakes assessments, and that can be challenging for students. So also looking at what supports can be put in place for those. And, you know, in Victoria, we're able to put in supports for students. And that's the case in many jurisdictions. So I think part of what I'm saying there is that it's not only the culture of the school, but just also the processes that can be put in place to make sure that when something is identified, the support is there.
What I love we're getting here tonight is that Jeff's position and Catherine's really bringing that expertise, and then Michael, you're reinforcing that with the really practical application on the ground. Feels like we rehearsed this. People, we haven't. This is just pure magic on the night. This is just beautiful for me as a facilitator. Thank you all so much for bringing expertise. Now, this next question is a bit odd because I'm going to throw to myself, but I promise it's the only one that I will. And I had to throw in that picture. Maybe someone will recognise. Actually, I might just make you all guess who it is in the chat box, who I'm standing next to, while I start off and talk a little bit about this. So talking about mindset. So this is the work of the lady who's standing next to me. Yes, someone. Thanks, Sam. Carol Dweck. Who I got to meet, and I was a little bit awestruck there. As you can see, I did love her book. So anyway, what we know about that, just some simple ideas around that is students that are praised for intelligence can come to see themselves with a fixed mindset, thinking that isn't something that they can change with effort. So that the more that we praise students, they become less confident, less resilient, less motivated, and decreased effort and response to setbacks. I'll read a quote from Carol herself, and it says, "I say praise and effort that lead to outcome or learning progress, tie the praise to it. It's not just the effort, it's the strategy." And that's really what Catherine was talking about before as well, which is what is that pedagogical approach, or what is that strategy? And now we're talking about student strategies, but it's the same for teacher strategies as well. So students need to know that if they're stuck, and then how they can overcome in working through that with their effort and choosing the right strategy at the right time. So that is just a little cover off on that. We can't delve into everything in great detail tonight. So Sel, in the secondary environment, I'm going to throw straight to Michael on this, because that's his wonderful school's framework there that inspired this invitation, really. Michael, go ahead.
Thanks very much, Tanya. And look, yeah, I think it's really important, as I sort of said before, for a school to have a vision or a picture or some clarity around what's important. And the recent situation has caused us to articulate that perhaps a bit more clearly than we have otherwise. So this was something that we developed during the remote learning period. I don't think it's a new thing to us, but really around articulating really clearly that schools do meet a really diverse range of needs for students. For us, we started the year with some bushfires very close to us, not in Wodonga, but nearby, which made it for a pretty challenging start to the year, and very conscious of students' needs, and that for many students returning to school and staff brought many positives, many things that supported their health and wellbeing. And we recognise being disadvantaged in a disadvantaged area with disadvantaged students, that for those students, for many of them, school provides many really critical lifelines and really critical supports. So really, it's critical that we have a really clear picture of the different needs that we're meeting, so that we can then acknowledge that in the work that we do, that whilst we are looking at students' academic learning growth and their aspirations and pathways, all these other things connect to the full picture of the student. And, you know, social and emotional learning is throughout that picture of needs that we've shown there as an example. You know, metacognition and self-regulation plays such an important role in all settings, but particularly in senior secondary, is we're really starting to expect, high levels of metacognition from students in the work that they do, and really expecting that level of achievement, and recognising that we need to meet all of these things in order for our students to be successful. So the example there is the model we developed for our school, which we'll continue to use outside of the remote learning period, really just to reiterate, to come back to, and to have a framework to refer to. Certainly in senior secondary, we do have a number of different programs that we run to address specific needs, around mental health, around early interventions, and, recognising that students do come from trauma backgrounds, and that's something we need to have trauma-informed practice. And we need to have quick and effective ways to respond to mental health concerns. So there's a whole picture of things there. And I think broadly for me, late adolescence is a time when students do going through another life transition, and these needs are at the forefront of their experience too. And I think a school culture supported by leadership and processes where teachers can support their students is just critical. And really, for me, one of the biggest things is for the teacher to be the learner alongside the students, and to be an honest learner, not to overshare in that sort of a setting, in that sort of a way, but to be honest in the terms of really, gaining students' respect, and not only modelling what's expected, but also modelling their own learning. And I think that is such a critical thing in this area, just to really be honest about it, and to be, vulnerable in a sense, but in an appropriate way, so as to support students to grow.
And I think you're right. It's been such a complex year for your school and for all schools across the globe. And I think for teachers, what you're talking about there is that vulnerability and being authentic is perhaps especially important at the moment. so that they can understand that it's probably they're not alone in the journey of trying to understand the world at the moment. So, and being an adolescent is so confusing anyway, and add to it the complexity of the situation.
Certainly part of our ethos is to show students that we care, and to do that regularly, and those little gestures in class matter so much, so much, and they are, you know, really protective for students' overall well-being.
Yeah, they are. I mean, I think we can all, and I wouldn't mind if everyone just put into the chat box a teacher, you know, that was protective for their mental health throughout their high school career, or, you know, how you try and do that within your class. Right now, I could put in one, Mr. Slater. That's my science teacher, was incredibly important to me for that. Yeah, I think we can't really emphasize that enough. And I'm going to pass over to Pauline to talk about a program that has evidence in the senior secondary, in the lower secondary setting.
Thanks, Tanya. So I was a secondary school teacher, and I think I've taught some of the most disadvantaged class in Singapore. I know a lot of you would think that Singapore students are all high performing, but they're not. Some of the classes are really disadvantaged, and as you know, some of them are streamed according to different tracks. So I think one of the most important thing that we can do as teachers is to show them that we care, and we care about their learning, we care about their lives, and we also care about their backgrounds and what they're experiencing at homes. You know, some of them having really difficult situations that they may not say or tell us, but like during the COVID situation, it's important that we open up the communication lines and through the positive action. So this is an intervention, but I think it's just all goes to say that positive actions from our teachers, from the school, is important when they come back to classes, that we do open up the channels for communication and let them openly express and communicate what was difficult for them during this time, what was, you know, difficult for them, what were they facing. And, you know, I think that's the most important positive action that we can show.
It is that deep understanding of each individual learner and understanding their unique learning needs. And, you know, what's difficult for one student isn't for another. And if they can learn to express that and overcome that from a young age, and that's what social emotional learning is all about, they'll really be at an advantage, especially those that come from difficult circumstances. So now we're going to talk about primary. So we're fortunate to have Catherine Dixie. I have a son in primary school, but and I have been homeschooling him for 2 weeks, but that does not make me a primary teacher. Makes me someone who attempted and has a lot more respect for primary teachers. So any primary teachers here, call out on the chat box, let us know if you're here. I'll get Catherine to talk to this point.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah.
Just before we jump into that though, I just wanted to also take the opportunity to say, you know, because of this international situation we're under, we're actually in a unique position of, you know, it's not just individual children in your class or students in your class that are bringing in concerns or issues and are being, you know, challenged with their mental health and well-being. That's the, you know, CEL, you know, supporting CEL is supposed to help. You know, it's happening community-wide. So even you as a teacher might be, you know, reflecting yourself about how your own mental health and well-being is being challenged in this. And I think there's a lovely opportunity to, it's an excellent leveler, like everyone's been challenged by this. So there's an opportunity there to really dig deep within yourselves to see, well, how am I feeling? So how are my kids feeling? You know, and really connect at that different level that we may not have had that opportunity to do before. So that all said, and you know, primary school is that excellent sort of age group to really start to bring that all together. So I just wanted to, I don't know if people are aware, there's this national program that Australia has that's been federally funded by the Department of Health, and basically it is our federal program into supporting the mental health and wellbeing outcomes of kids from birth to school leaving. So it's early childhood right through to school leaving. And as part of that program called BU, it has this thing called a programs directory, and there's over 240 programs listed in there. For example, Bounce Back, there'll be lots of programs you've heard about. It's got a directory where you can put in keywords or settings, topics, domains, so you can get together with your school and work out that actually bullying is a really big issue in our school. What are we going to do about it? So you might want to type in bullying as the term, and then there'll be the programs guide brings up all of those relevant programs that you can then go through and identify which one you think might be useful for your school. So there are these sorts of resources out there, and it really does help you identify, hopefully fairly easily, which direction you need to take with your school to, again, that sort of whole school approach where everyone can, grab a program, get all behind it, start to, run the program itself within the school, and then implement the strategies that the program promotes. So yeah, I just wanted to get, if people weren't aware of that, and obviously the international audience, equally, this is a publicly available website. You're welcome to, and a lot of these programs are not just Australian programs. They're from around, America and the UK and elsewhere. So that might be a useful resource for you.
Thank you very much, Catherine. And I know that you've also put together, we've got an annotated list of resources as well, which will be sent out at the end of this presentation next week. So we had some questions about assessing students' mental health and different ways that we can go about this. I'm going to throw back to you, Dr. Dix, on this.
So again,
start us off.
There's a number of, lots of different tools out there. One of them that's a very common, easy to use one is, it's just like a little 3-page document. It's called the Beatles observational tool. So you might start to have concerns about a particular student or students in your classroom. You can do a little bit of an observational checklist that you might want to do, a couple of months later to see, check in how they're going. And it just helps you to capture that information, and then helps you work through, well, what are the concerns, and then what might be the sorts of avenues and resources and strategies you might help to put in place for that particular child. There is other things like screening tools, like, I don't know if you've heard of Goodman's Strength and Difficulties Questionnaire. It's a very commonly used one. It's 25 items that can be assessed by the teacher or the parent, or for the older students, they can self-assess. And it's just a bit of a screening tool to help identify if they've got peer problems, hyperactivity behaviour, pro-social skills, etc. So yeah, there's and then we've got ACER also has this student social emotional wellbeing survey, which a school engages the survey to be administered in their school, and then they receive a report on the wellbeing outcomes of their students. So, you can do it big, high level like that as a sort of school-wide approach, or you can drill down into just individuals. You're a wellbeing officer in the school, and you just want to tap in and see where a couple of those kids are and how they're progressing. Just to also mention, the BU program itself also has, if you engage and register as an organisation, a school, you get access to a whole series of tools that help your action team to monitor how parents are going, how students are going, in terms of that whole school mental health promotion and wellbeing promotion strategy that you're implementing in your school. And one major component of that strategy is around supporting social emotional development of students.
Thank you, Catherine. I know that I've used the social emotional wellbeing survey in my research in working with students in Western Sydney, and it was, it's an exceptional tool. I liked it. And thank you for presenting it at the different levels and the different use levels that you can do, either a whole school approach or just focusing in on one student. I'd like to throw to Michael now to hear I guess what's your approach at your school, and any thoughts to what Catherine said?
Yeah, thanks, Tanya. Again, agreeing with what Catherine shared there. And we use a number of different tools, and they are different tools, but different settings will have different tools available to them. One thing in particular we use is something developed by Headspace and the department in Victoria called the Safe Minds resources, and that's really something for teachers to refer to quite closely, and has a little protocol around noticing, inquiring, and then planning, which is a way to deal with when you're starting to see something coming up with a student that might be indicative of a mental health concern. So that's one thing, and there's some other supporting resources around that which we found to be quite good, but again there are many others. Another thing we've done is to put all staff and students through the youth mental health first aid training, which has given us a common language and a common understanding to work and discuss mental health. And it's really there around making it something that everyone, with that language and with that understanding, that's something that students can discuss amongst themselves, they can discuss with their peers, they can discuss with their parents. They have a language to talk about mental health in the way we might talk about other aspects of our health, which also makes it easier for teachers to raise concerns. So it's really, with young adults, about giving them the tools to go further in their life and be able to take that with them. Obviously, I mentioned before too, trauma-informed practice is big for us in terms of noticing those things you may not normally notice. So the behavioural things and the relationship things that flow from trauma and what that might indicate about a student and how we deal with that. So that's probably another important area of our practice.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. I think the students at your school are very well looked after. It's a wonderful thing.
We keep doing our best.
Good on you. All right, so we've touched on this briefly, but zooming into it in a bit more detail, also mindful of time. So in thinking about COVID-19 pandemic and responses to that, I know, Michael, you've touched on that already, and I might throw back to you straight away, and then to Catherine, and then to Pauline on this one.
I think it's been critical for us. Students' ability to cope with the pandemic has been really closely linked to their skills in this area. And having that full picture of the students' needs. We've really had an ethos at our school of showing the students that we care, and we knew that in this time it was going to be critical that we were connected with our students. So we put in place a structure where every student would have some additional contact from the school every week to track and check in on them, in addition to all their teachers. So we used support staff and leadership staff and others to check in with the students just to show that we care and we are following their issues. And I think what the pandemic has also shown to us is that, contrary to perhaps some perceptions, disadvantaged students do deeply care about their learning. We've had exceptional levels of engagement during this pandemic from students who most likely have challenging learning at home environments, financial pressures, all of that going on, and they're at home with their whole family. We've had exceptionally high levels of engagement. So that shows that students care too. So I think that's also an important thing to keep in mind, and that supporting them in that way can help them to do.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I like the way you've talked about that you're reaching out and available to all the students, and I think in mobilising your team to reach out to individuals would have been so important in this time.
Including our lab tech, you'd appreciate.
Wow, I do appreciate that. I always work very closely with my lab tech. Sorry, I'm a science teacher, people. You hadn't realised. Catherine, I'll throw to you now.
It's a really good opportunity to know that there's no way where we're returning back to normal. Like there is going to be this new normal going forward, and this is an ideal opportunity, as challenging as it is, to raise the bar and actually really deeply reflect at a sort of whole school organisational approach. What are you doing really well at the moment with supporting your community, and where this if anything is going to sort of identify some areas where you could probably make some improvements. So, really, engage with that approach and really move the whole school environment, your whole community forward, taking the opportunity to learn from this current situation on ways of improving what you're doing to better support, your students going forward, because any changes now are going to be, beneficial going beyond, the recovery path and all the rest of it. And, I hate to say it, but this may not be the first time. So, there might be this new normal we have, and gearing yourselves up and putting yourself in the best possible situation that best supports everyone is going to only just be beneficial long term.
No, I agree with you with it might not be the first time being a microbiologist. So hopefully, fingers crossed, but evidence suggests otherwise. What I'm going to do, I think how are we going? We're pretty good, actually. We're just going to jump to this very last question, digital age and cell. And sorry, we won't be able to do a lot of justice to this. I'll start off with Michael and then I'll throw to Pauline on this one. Very briefly from me, it's just been for us a case of having resources in place for students. We put in place a lot of work to make sure every student had a laptop and had internet, and we were well supported locally by the department to do that. And then putting stuff in place to connect to students, and they cared, and showing that we care. I think students are very motivated, and we come from what you would stereotype as a disengaged cohort. They were very motivated. That's wonderful news, Michael. Pauline, did you want to touch on anything here? I think you've got a minute or two.
I'll make it quick. You're pressurizing me now.
Sorry, I know. If I hadn't said it, it'd be easier.
Good. I think it's a good wrap up, because I think what Catherine had just said earlier around what we can best bring out for the future for education, this is the best opportunity. Through looking from the evidence base, there's really no evidence about how we can do remote learning best. We found nothing. So what we are doing right now is kind of what we can best shift what we are doing in classrooms onto online, but with the use of technology to connect with our students. However, I think in the future of going back to schools and thinking about how the future of learning look like, we need to think about how blended learning would look like in the classrooms from now on, because we need to prepare all our students, not just the most capable students, but also the most disadvantaged and vulnerable students who need the self-regulation of tools and skills to be able to learn independently. And that will require preparation from schools to thoughtfully think about interventions that might work in the classrooms. And some of the best interventions involve technology, and we can't shy away from that. We need to bring technology into the classroom using simple tools like mobile learning. Mobile, but not for texting, but for learning, and also some programs that work, some intelligent tutoring systems, online tutoring that might help to aid and support your learning. And through this, of course, not forgetting all the SEL, social emotional competencies that we want to build into a classroom. And some of the best evidence is where teachers are most fast-paced in engaging student learning. So one example is using station rotation model. Station rotation model is a very well evidence model used in blended learning, where in a classroom you don't just have one activity, but you have multiple activities going on, rotating the students across different stations, from whole class learning to guided practice on the computer program, and then changing over to some group learning and back to collaborative or group discussion. So thinking about all these things that make the classroom exciting. I think that's.
Thank you, Paula. You did a lot in that couple of minutes.
More than 2 minutes.
No, but it was beautiful. I couldn't interrupt you. These are questions that we've answered and will be sent in along with additional resources. I'm just going to wrap up now because I'm very respectful of your time. Any questions that you haven't had a chance, you put into the chat box and we haven't been able to respond to, you just send to the email address that I'll flash up on the screen at the moment. I think the key take homes, and I'll look at this, but it's also what really has come out tonight, is really a clear and consistent common language across a school. And that comes from clear implementation at the whole school level, but then also thinking about individual students' needs and how we can best serve those with specialist interventions as well. And it all comes down to, really, I like some of the key phrases from tonight was allowing teachers to be vulnerable and really to be open and to demonstrate that they care for their students. It's really that humanisation, which I think teachers are exceptional at already, but you know, some of our more difficult students, it can be harder to reach them. So thank you all for your time tonight. I know how busy you are as educators across the world, especially at the moment when we've had the online, offline back. Some of you may still be online. I know you've all been working overtime, so thank you for taking time out of your day to find out about CEL with us. I have to do a special thanks to the amazing expertise that Catherine's brought, especially to this. And Michael, thank you for your eloquence and your passion for your students in your setting, and for really saying what are the practical applications of the theory into action to really help those students. So thank you for you. And Pauline, well, thank you for being here, and you added excellent insights around everything as well. So thank you all very much for your time tonight. To get in touch, there's my email address. I'll put you in touch with any of the other speakers. If you want a certificate of attendance, go to info@Evidence for Learning. If you have questions that we weren't able to get to, which I know you're typing into the chat box, we just had so many and we were so pleased to have you all here with us tonight. We have an e-newsletter which is super fun, has lots of statistics in it. I love it. We're on Twitter and the socials. We have our next webinar, which is on literacy, which is going to be a lot of fun. And we have our Evidence Informed Educator Network as well. But I would just want to say thank you to all the educators out there across the world that just go in there and do 100% the best for their kids every day. And thank you for caring and helping making this generation better than the last. So thank you and have a great night.